Welcome back, everybody, to the Line Ball Pool channel. My name is Max, and today we have a very different video for you. I'm going to be speaking with an ultimate pool player and commentator who's taken his time to come and speak with us, and we're going to learn a little bit more about his story. We're all about cue sports here on the Line Ball channel, whether it's snooker, pool, line ball. And today we're going to take that chance to learn about someone who's in the scene, go behind the scenes, and explore even more depth and detail. So I'd like to welcome you, Luke Terry. How are you today?
I'm very good, Max. How are you?
I'm really good. Thank you so much for joining us today, Luke. It is brilliant to speak with you. And at the start, I'd really like to go all the way back to beginning because everyone has a way into the world of pool, right? I started playing on, I feel like every pool club or a lot of pool places have like a free Tuesday nights. And for me, it was free Tuesday night pool with my friends. But I want to know from you, how did you first pick up the cue and get into the world of pool?
Do you know what? It's actually a very family-based thing. So my granddad used to play snooker back in the 80s alongside my dad. My dad was like a local finalist. He was a very good player in the area. And it just so happened that one Christmas I had no ideas at all as to what I wanted. I was about 10 years old. And my dad decided to take the risk and he bought me a pool table for Christmas. And it just grew. I kind of reached the point where I was playing at home and there was something there. I was just enjoying it. And then snooker was kind of where I turned to. And that was kind of my initial introduction. There was a club down the road from me that's literally closed about 6 months after I started. And then it was a case of going into social clubs because being 10, 11 years old, you're too young to be going into the bars and things like that. So I kind of slowly got introduced into the local area. And then I started playing local league when I was 13, and I didn't really look back, to be fair. It's scary to think about, but yeah, it became my hobby because, to be honest with you, I wasn't physically in shape enough to be a rugby player. So
I know that exact feeling because growing up, I used to play football a lot and I thought that
yeah,
was going to be my thing. And then one back injury, and suddenly football's out the window for me. And kind of once I'd recovered from that, I was thinking, oh, everyone my age has already kind of passed me in ability and all that. So, like you, I joined my dad in the pool leagues, and I feel like that is a way a lot of people get into it. And so, in terms of your influence, you've talked about the family side of things, and I feel like everyone's got that personal idol. But for you, I remember seeing that in terms of snooker, one of your idols is Mark Allen. So I'd love to know why him, because he's had a really interesting career, because he's changed so much as a player and a person. So I'd love to know why Mark Allen, and also what specific time in his career he became your idol.
yeah. So this was around about when I started playing in the pool league. So I would have been about 13, 14. There was kind of when I started playing, there was maybe a 1 year, 2 year kind of bedding in phase where I kind of initially started to get good. And then I entered my local competition in Forest Row. And I just happened to win it. And from there, I was invited to play for the team at that club. And then I started playing pool. And when you're younger, I mean, I don't know if you have this at all, Max, but occasionally you almost like hunt to try and get better and you try and look at other people's games and try and base it around your own. And me watching a lot of snooker at the time, I used to go to the Masters with my dad in January every year, and I then went with my mum's partner as well. And there was just one day I was watching, and I was watching Mark Allen. Obviously, Mark is a player that's got quite a short cue action, which means that it's a bit more diverse, it's a bit more adaptable to a pool table. And when I kind of saw how good he was at playing these like little cannons and these little niche shots on the table, it felt like something that I could do and something I really wanted to aspire to. I think also a little bit, I think my family, I've got a little bit of Northern Irish background as well. So I think that did play a little bit of a factor in that too. But as I say, he was somebody that I just really looked up to. He was never in your face. He was never as a character either. He was just very much did what he did, and enjoyed the community, which is, I think, the same realm that I'm in as well. So I think that's why I really enjoyed his character.
Yeah, and I feel like the character of pool player or snooker player that you end up emulating is often one that you feel a personal connection to. I mean, for me, my mum is Welsh, I'm half Welsh, so Mark Williams was a big one for me. He's also left handed, I'm left handed, and oddly as well, when I cue specifically, and this anecdote's a little bit specific to me, my right thumb, I've kind of got a problem with cueing on my right thumb, and so sometimes I can't bridge on it properly as a normal player would. So
Right.
I had to kind of learn from certain angles a one-handed shot. And seeing Mark Williams, he has that in his locker. So watching his play, a left-handed Welsh one hand shooter was just a really nice thing to see because he never did it to showboat. He was always doing it for a reason, and that was something that really struck me. And so I think you're totally right. If there is a cultural incentive, if there's a personality one, I can see why he would have become your kind of idol. So you mentioned in there that you've obviously been and seen lots of snooker live. So do you have a moment that stands out to you as the best moment you have seen live?
Um, do you know what? I think it would have to be. It was when the was it the British Open or it was the English Open, that was it. So the English Open used to be held at the K2 in Crawley. It was held there for 2 years. And one of the years I went up, us and a couple of the guys from Forest Row, we booked in, I think it was for a random Wednesday afternoon. I just happened to be off from work and they were as well. Um, and Ronnie O'Sullivan was playing Alan Taylor, and it was when he made the 147. Um, and obviously, when you go and watch snooker, it's one thing to go, oh, wow, I've gone and watched snooker live. But it's another thing to see someone make a 147. And it always makes me laugh a little bit because I saw Ronnie make that 147. And then lo and behold, about 6 to 8 months down the line, I went over to Wales, to Cardiff, and a friend of mine that you know as well, Reese Harmer, I went to go and see him while he was at university. But the snooker was on at that time as well. So I booked to go over for about a week and a half, 4 or 5 days of it watching the snooker, the other 4 or 5 to hang out with him. Um, and lo and behold, I was watching, I think it was Neil Robertson against Kurt Mafflin. And I watched the first 3 frames and I went, right, I better go and see Reese and go and have some food with him. And I walked out, and the next frame, Neil Robertson made a 147, which has always haunted me a little bit because I would have loved to have seen that live. But in terms of what I've seen, yeah, definitely the Ronnie 147 because it was out of nowhere, really.
Yeah, that's incredible. I'm glad you got to see A147 in person because I feel like it's so tantalizing. Sometimes they're so close. And the last snooker question I'm going to ask you for this little bit, and then we'll come back to it later after we've talked Ultimate Pool League. We've recently had the Riyadh Masters and the 167 now opening up.
Yeah.
So I'd like to know what you think of a 167. Do you think it has a place in the game? Do you not really mind it? Or do you think it's damaging for the game?
I think there's a lot of argument whichever way you look. I mean, I have had discussions with people before about this, and some people have gone, well, it could stain the game. Everybody's going to start treating snooker like a game show. It's going to take away the traditional form of the game. And I couldn't disagree more. I think at the end of the day, I think every culture has a different way that they approach snooker. I mean, even when you go out to China, for example, the Hanoi Open, the Wuhan Open, these were all red carpeted events. Everybody loves the traditional style of snooker out in China. It's studied out there as a sport, as in your kind of casual PE lessons. Back in England, obviously, it's always been a working class sport. It used to be a case that people used to finish work and then go home and then play it. And it's one of those that I think you could never lose the originality in certain cultures because of how embedded it is. Whereas obviously somewhere in like Saudi Arabia, where a lot of money can be put into it, the game can be edited a little bit and you can kind of have those game show styles. And the other thing that I argued as well was that obviously the snooker shootout's been going on for a very long time, and that's never had an impact on the rest of the sport. So why should this?
That's a really interesting take because, yeah, I feel like people at the moment either love it or hate it. So I love hearing a perspective where you see both sides, and it's so true. Because, as you say, with the snooker shootout, the audience are a lot more vocal, right? So the culture of that space is so much more different versus anything else on the circuit. So that's really interesting. And for those listening, for those watching along, I'd love to know what you think about the 167 in the comments, so let us know. Luke and I will be reading through the comments and we'll get back to you as well. So that's it for snooker for now. We can come back to it later, but I'd love to now step into your world of the ultimate pool. And before I jump into your relationship with it, could you just give, for the listeners and the viewers' sake, what is ultimate pool?
So Ultimate Pool, um, there's always been pool foundations around, but there's never been a form of pool that's really taken it to the next level and made it that kind of TV showcase. Obviously, we've seen with snooker that it's big on the BBC. Um, Obviously, American pool has always had Matchroom and has had that big promotion for the Moscone Cup, but it just felt like something that English pool was always missing. And Ultimate Pool was essentially founded by Gareth Potts, one of the greatest English pool players of all time, alongside a lot of other great kind of talisman and great people behind the pool world, um, in order to really give it that kind of exposure that it's always deserved. Because at the end of the day, these players are unbelievable at what they do. I mean, Tom Cousins, who's number one at the moment, he's won 3 or 4 ranking events this year. And in such short format, it's almost impossible to do that. But now that we have this showcase where we can really show off what he can do, it's amazing. And it's based around kind of American pool rules or Chinese 8 ball rules. So it's a lot more internationalized than pool ever has been before. As well as that, if a game ends up in a tie after a certain time period, then we have what's called the 6 red shootout, which is essentially 6 reds put in a triangle, and then the player breaks off and they've got to try and clear them in the quickest time possible. And if they come under the opponent's score, then they win. And if they go over their time, then they lose. But there's all these little kind of factors to kind of speed up the game and make it a lot more kind of crash bang wallop, which I think is what a lot of people want to watch nowadays. I think short format has never been more popular than it is now. And I think Ultimate Pool have hit it on the head so far. And the growth that it's seen in the 2, 3 years it's been around has been exceptional, really. And it's going to stay for a long time, I think.
Yeah, I think I couldn't agree more, especially on the short form content aspect, because I love it when I open YouTube Shorts. And as you said, the 6 red shootout, where it's all about time, you can fit that narrative, just the end game, the bit that really means everything, into a 1 minute reel, YouTube short, TikTok. It's great because it exposes snooker to people who would otherwise never know it exists, who don't have time to watch a full best of 30 frame final. And I struggle to. I mean, I usually watch most of my highlights of the World Snooker Tour through their YouTube channel, through catch up TV, through any way I can. But as you said, with Ultimate Pool League, that aspect is really integral, that you can get it out to people who are scrolling through their phones, who will then come and look at it on a different platform. So I'd like to know from you next then about what was your journey into Ultimate Pool? How did you first get in? And what do you do now?
Well, I wouldn't say mine was the orthodox route by any stretch of the imagination. When I started in the local league, I kind of just pushed on and pushed on. And when I was about 14, 15, there were 2 guys that realised that I had potential in the sport. One was called Ian Wicks, or Wixie, who was my club captain at Forest Row, and the other one was called Nigel Bailey, who used to run the ex Services Club in East Grinstead. He was also an ex England international. He played for England for the Masters team. And essentially, me and Nigel kind of went on that initial journey. He kind of introduced me into the county teams for Blackpool Pool, which is another form. I played for Sussex B team for about 3 years, and then I played for the A team for a year. And then I went off to university, and I mean, obviously, little bit of a sad note, but I'm not going to drag into that too much. But unfortunately, during lockdown, both Wixie and Nigel both passed away. And at that point, I went off to America. I did a year abroad, so I came back. I was at university in Leicester because it had good pool and snooker foundations. And when I came back, there was a real kind of period where I was debating, do I kind of carry on because maybe I'm not feeling the sport anymore, or do I push through and see where it goes? And there was a real point where I sat down and I had a conversation with a guy called Al Hellier. And I remember this discussion. And essentially, the thing that he said is, Nigel had always built up this foundation in the area. He'd built a community. And there was a point where I realized that what I was doing and the effect that I was having was that I could build a community. And, there was the opportunity that one day, if I got good enough, that I could win a major trophy and I could, bring it home and have that celebration and get more people into the sport. And even if it was an opportunity, my dream has always been to win that one big trophy, come home and just get back together all of the people that I've known over the course of the years that have contributed to where I am now. Because mentally I wasn't as strong before, and pushing on with the sport has really helped. When I was at university in Leicester, there was a guy called Reece Townsend. He set up Leicester Pool Promotions, which is now huge on Facebook. It's got thousands of following, and he needed a commentator. There was a league that he was running initially with 40 people. He said, I need a commentator. I haven't got anybody to do it, but I really want to invest in this. I think it's got potential and future. And I just stepped up in the moment. I said, I'll give it a go because I like my statistics. I like playing in the league. I'll give it a go. And there was something about a guy with a somewhat Sussex Cockney accent in the middle of Leicester that just hit off and became popular with people. And from there, I didn't really look back. I got invited to an ultimate pool event by Stevie O'Connor, who's the dad of Joe O'Connor, the snooker player. I met Joe while I was on the tour as well. And basically, I turned up. Stevie O'Connor knocked on the commentator's door and went, look, this guy's a commentator. He knows what he's doing. And they threw me straight in at the deep end. The next thing I knew, I was commentating for Ultimate Pool. I was getting paid to go off and do events for them and commentate, and as well as play on the tour as well. And this all happened in the space, Max, of about 3 months last year, where actually from just kind of doing it as a hobby and having fun with it in Leicester, all of a sudden it was a case of sitting down with people and them going, well, actually, you've got a real career here that you could take off with. And that's what I've been trying to push ever since.
Yeah, that is incredible. I think the fact that it all happened in such a short space of time shows just how much you'd slowly been chipping away at this over the last few years, and then suddenly it's exploded into life in one go, and that is incredible. So I want to dive into both sides of this next, your playing side and your commentary side. I'll start with the playing side because you've cited saying before that you are more of an emotional pool player, and I think we can all relate to that. Everyone watching and listening has played that game where they want to smack the cue against the end of the table. I'm not saying you're that emotional, but I know we've all had that feeling. How do you control the mental and emotional side of when you're playing and the stakes are so high?
Trust me, Max. I mean, I'm still not great, but it's just a case of you begin to realize what you can and can't do. And don't get me wrong, I still get nervous, and there's still points where I'm playing in events and I can get frustrated. But also at the same time, I know I can go on runs and I know I can do damage. And when I did that event up in Leicester, the initial Leicester Pool Promotions, they threw me right in the deep end. They put me in the top division, 10 players in that top division. And it was a case of, the top four are in prize money, the bottom two get relegated. And my initial outlook when I joined that league was just don't get relegated. Whatever you do, don't get relegated. And as it was, I ended up finishing in third place. I went through a streak of winning 9 in a row, and I actually was in good contention of potentially winning the whole thing. I got stumped at the end by a guy called Kane Skinner, who's an unbelievable amateur player. And if he wanted to, he could definitely go deep in a lot of the ultimate events if he ever decided to enter. Um, but there were just results over the course of that year in Leicester last year, which really helped. I mean, I beat some of the professionals that are on the tour now. I beat Kyle Cope. I beat Vivek Mack. I took Josh Kane to a decider where, when in a game where there were 8 clearances from the break in a row. And when I realised that I could play against that standard, it was a case of sitting down and going, why are you getting nervous in these other events when you know you can play leagues above what a lot of players can? And I think just having that mental instinct of you can do it really, really helps. Whereas I think before, where I didn't maybe know a lot of the tour and I was kind of introductory, it's tougher because you don't just casually speak to these people. You're not constantly narrating their games and learning. And when you turn up to play, you really come in cold. You're quite nervous. And now I kind of walk around and without being cocky, I'm boastful. I know what I can do, and I'm happy to explain that. But at the same time, I'm humble in the way that I want to be able to help other people become good at sports. I want to be able to help push people in whichever way I can, whether that's in pool or out of pool. And, I essentially turned my life around from where I was maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
That's incredible. And I love what you said about the mental side of how the pressure changes everything, because when you haven't got pressure on, the table feels so different. I mean, my favorite sort of round of snooker of all time is Ding Junhui versus Martin Gould. You might know the one I'm talking about from the 2016 World Championship, where he had the flukiest, luckiest
Yes.
century break, the Martin Gould one, where he had some luck, he had some bounces, and he had some of the most beautiful powered long shots I've seen in the game. And it's because there was no pressure on. He'd won it at about sort of 70 points, and he just went on to have this seriously entertaining finish. And so pressure runs right through from the top pros to the starting amateurs, and so it's incredible how you kind of recognize that in yourself. Then it seems like you're a very introspective player, which reflects quite well on someone who goes on to become a teacher. So I know you mentioned there that you want to reach out and start helping people. So have you been a tutor of pool now, or is that something you're looking to get into in the future?
Just going back a little bit, just about the pressure thing as well. Funnily enough, about Martin Gould as well, and I think it's another thing that shows the context of pressure as well. Is that Martin Gould has been on the tour for the best part of 20 years. Very experienced professional, very good cueist. We've seen exactly what he can do. But actually, on ranking points this year, he's likely to fall off the tour. He's outside the top 80, not even in the top 64. And it's crazy to look at that perspective. But now, kind of going back onto the point, I've forgotten the question that you asked.
It's all right. So just about teaching. So are you starting to teach new players just coming into the scene, or is that something that you're looking to do down the line once you've kind of settled your own achievements within commentary and playing?
So at the moment, I do coach a couple of people. I'm not an official, quote by quote coach. There are coaching degrees within Ultimate Pool that I am going to look to do within the next 6 to 12 months. I think that will be really beneficial to me as well. But what I do locally is obviously if anybody wants help, then I will always offer it to them. Because I know, having done the commentary, I know what's right and what's wrong. I may not necessarily be the best player in the world, but I know how to teach people the basics, and I know how to, get people to roughly where they want to get to. And even if it's just a case of they've got to put in that repetition, then they've got to do that. I mean, obviously for me, I'm just a guide. Playing pool, as you know, takes a lot of hours and it's a lot of work, and it can be quite strenuous. But you eventually get there and you have those little breakthroughs. And as I say, as a coach, you've just got to push them in that right direction.
This is going to conclude part one. but we are still going to be speaking to Luke on the channel. As you'll know if you've been watching a lot of the Lion Ball pool videos at the minute, this is right in the middle of our current tournament, the King of the Hill Shootout Invitational. It's been going out every Tuesday at 6 p.m. for the last few weeks, so I hope you've been enjoying the Lion Ball content in the channel. But we will be coming back to speak to Luke again in a couple of weeks, so subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on part 2. What will we be talking about? I'm going to ask Luke for his advice for up-and-coming pool players. I'm going to ask him about what some of his favourite rule sets are. As we know, there are so many different ways to play pool. And Luke has started to learn a little bit about Lion Ball too, so I'm going to ask him what he preliminarily thinks about the rules of Lion Ball and the innovations we've done here, because the third part of the series we're doing with Luke will be playing some Lion Ball in person on the channel in a few weeks' time down the road. So subscribe to check it out. We'll see him in action on the channel with some gameplay and see how it compares to pool, because they're very, very different. But I'm sure Luke will be just fine once he's got the rule set under his belt. So thank you all so much for watching. I've been Max. Luke Terry has been with us talking all about Ultimate Pool, snooker and his journey, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks to continue that conversation.
Thank you so much, Max.